evening, everyone. It is your girl, Marcy Thomas, and I am so happy to be back with you for another episode of the BGC Book Club. So please come on in the room. Come on in the room. Go ahead and tell your friends that we are back live, and things look a little bit different because I'm using a different platform. So I hope that you will enjoy seeing this new experience that we have here for the BGC Book Club. So I am coming to you from the outskirts of Atlanta, Georgia, originally from Cleveland, Ohio, with some time in Detroit and Chicago, which is talked about in the book. I don't know if our author knows that I lived in Chicago for a short time, but I am so happy to be here with you as always, just to bring another wonderful author to you. So if you don't mind, you can drop in the comments where you're joining us from, just so we can all get an idea of who is here and get ready for what's going to be a really wonderful conversation. So tonight, I'm excited to have back with me for the fourth time, actually, Denny S. Bryce, who is an award-winning author of historical fiction, including Wild Women and the Blues. And I'm going to share some of the books she's been with us before here in just a moment. But she is a former professional dancer and PR executive, and she is now an adjunct MFA professor at Drexel University, an NPR book critic, and a freelance writer published in USA Today, Harper's Bazaar, and Frolic Media. Originally from Chicago, she lives in Savannah, Georgia, where I also have a connection, and I'll be seeing her on this weekend. So Denny has been here before to talk about In the Face of the Sun and The Other Princess and The Trials of Mrs. Rhinelander. And tonight, I'm so excited to come to you with her book baby, who's only been out actually 6 days as of today, and that is Where the False Gods Dwell. So without any further delay, let's welcome Denny S. Bryce back to the BGC Book Club.
Hi.
Hey. And we're back.
Yes, I am back and am thrilled to be back. It's always great to talk to you, and it's always great to talk about books with you. And we always end up also talking about some other things that just come into the book.
Yes, because we have some things in common in terms of locations and stuff like that. So I just want to share. We have
Cleveland, etc.
So we have Keena saying hello. Has someone joining us from Ohio? Okay. Jersey, got Jersey in the house today. Okay.
And I'm going to be next week. I'll be in New York.
Oh, okay. We'll be on the lookout for that. And then also Atlanta. ATL always shows up in the room. So, well, first of all, Denny, I just want to congratulate you on this new book.
Thank you. This is, what did I do? I didn't do something, did I? Okay, good. Because the screen moves and I touched something up. This is Where the False Gods Dwell. And actually, I have a nice big poster in the back. This is my 6th novel in 5 years.
Yeah, you've been busy.
I've been busy and traveling through history. And this one was inspired by a number of things. Definitely, the first connection that I had with this story is actually another novel called The Talented Mr. Ripley.
I'm familiar with that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that novel came out in the 1940s by Patricia Highsmith, I believe her name was. She was a queer author, which was very unusual during that time period for women to be publicly queer out like that in the 1940s of all the time periods. And then the book, she wrote a series about, many people might be more familiar with the film. So, but I read the book. It's a very interesting thriller. And for some reason, I was trying to get more of a thriller feel to the story. And so that's where I started. But then as my research will do this to you, my research led me down another path. Still having some thriller elements, but I wouldn't call the book a thriller necessarily. It has some thrilling moments and surprises and a few surprises. But I really got immersed in what was just happening in the world in 1935. And Chicago, in particular, it was 3 years after the World's Fair. And the World's Fair included Katherine Dunham's, one of her early dance companies. I think it was called Negro Ensemble or something like that. It had some little French, characters on top. So it's probably Negre or something like that. But pronunciation wise, I'm not sure. But I learned that she was an anthropologist at the University of Chicago, and she became immersed in African dance, and she wanted to really explore authentic African dance. So I said, "Wow!" And in 1935, she was 24 years old. She was a kid, early in her career. 24 or 26, I can't remember exactly. So that fed into another storyline. So I wanted to have some thrillery elements. I'd just come back from Jamaica when I started this book. I wanted to get some Jamaica in there. And there's a movie. I always pull together things out of 100 different places to get to where I want to be in a story. But there's a old movie called Ship of Fools. And it was, I'm an old movie fan. I'm a film fan. And this was 1950s, probably 1940s, maybe. I think 1950s or maybe early 1960s. But the whole premise of the novel, of this particular film, had to do with these characters who were traveling from Europe or wherever they were traveling from. But it was during that time period, 1935-ish, 1936, just before World War II really kicked off in Europe. Not so much about the US, but so the people on board the ship were a composite of some of the issues, really, some of the politics that were happening in the world. So I played around with all of that and said, "Oh,
yes, you did." Yes, this story, of course, we've already talked about it. We've done and had conversation about 3 of your previous books. And, everybody, you can go back and, first of all, if you haven't read them, I suggest that you do and go back and look at the Brown Girl Collective YouTube channel and see those conversations. I'll be sure to link them. But this one was definitely, it felt different from the others because there is that, you brought some of that Chicago gangster into it. You brought Jamaica into it and the things that were happening in Jamaica at that time. And then you also brought, Katherine Dunham, who many of us have heard of her or maybe somewhat aware of some of her work. So she's in it, but it's not really a story about her. And like in your author notes, you say that up front that, this is fiction. These are not things that happen for real.
Some of the things did happen for real now. She definitely, one of the books that I used to really get a sense of what was happening in Jamaica, in the Cockpit country, in Accompong, the Maroon village, were from a book she wrote that was published in 1941, specifically about her time in that Maroon village. And she was there, for example, some of the celebrations and the chromati that are discussed in the book are actual events that occurred. And the names of the chief in charge of that particular town of the Maroon village, that was him. I can't remember names because it's a couple of books ago.
Right. Yeah, we'll talk about that a little later. But yes.
Yeah. And so there quite a bit of the happenings in Jamaica. Definitely the union activist character. I played around with some names, but all of that activity was definitely a part of the union, of the labor union drive for, and the union was established, I think, by 1936. But during when my story is taking place, there's a lot of pushback, of course,
Right.
and um, interesting times, because it was, as I am often find myself, history continues to surprise me.
Yes.
Things that I'm assuming when I walk into a new story idea and I'm going to dig this way or I'm going to dig that way, I'm going to have this, that, and the other happen. And then the more I research, the more I discover. And
Right.
it does impact sometimes, quite often, the direction that the story goes.
Right. Right. And I guess what I'm saying that the three people, that part is fictionalized. But yes, her being there and some of the
Yes.
other things. Because
Right,
you
right.
specifically state that she went on these trips by herself, but in the story
Sure.
she's
She's with, she has a whole crew with her.
she has a
And
whole crew.
a whole crew of people. And I wanted them traveling with purpose, and she fit.
Mhm.
And her journey I found fascinating, especially since I think she passed away in 2001 or 2003. I met her um, in Chicago when I was dancing. She was older. I think I met her probably in the 90s or
Okay.
80s. And she was an icon of the dance
Mhm.
community then, of course. She was also in that time period, probably in St. Louis, and she was probably still doing some things, but she'd come through Chicago and either, master class or whatever. And I was a modern dancer at the time.
Okay. I
So,
love that.
yeah. I think about it and I go, how did that happen? But
Yeah, that's the story you need to write one day, but yeah.
yeah, I've had some friends push me to write a memoir, and I said, no, I won't write a memoir. I may write a story that includes some of my adventures, because I did have a few.
Okay.
Um,
I
and
love that.
yeah, I did. I was at a talk in Atlanta the other day, in fact, and part of what I talked about was how the story I'm working on now. I just want something very messy,
Okay.
and it's set in the 1960s and 1970s. So, and I sort of brought a little bit of that energy, or maybe a lot of that energy, to Where the False Gods Dwell.
Mhm.
I want it messy.
Yeah, there's
I
some
want
messy in
women.
here. For sure. For sure.
Yeah, yeah. And the first character that came to me, honestly, was more so Vivian Jean,
Okay, Vivian Jean.
because
Yes.
yeah, yeah. Even though Othella, once I caught up with her, she was right there for me. But and Zinzi too. Zinzi, I really enjoyed these three women. I really
Yeah.
enjoyed their tenacity, Vivian Jean's confusion and guilt. I found fascinating. Um, the childish missteps of Othella, I found
Yes.
fascinating. She go one place. She had so much talent, and
Mm.
then but not enough of some other things. Some of her other traits just kept getting in the way, and and
Right.
and just her backstory kept coming,
Yeah.
chasing her around.
Yes, it
Um,
did. It did for sure.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
I just really want to. Okay, we know that Katherine Dunham, she's traveling, she's leaving Chicago. There's this
mhm,
cast of characters, some that she knows are going to go with her, others that kind of end up being a part of the journey. But I guess in
yeah,
deciding to write the story and deciding to make it like a sisterhood story, because really to me it is a sisterhood story, and how we
yes,
see people who are unlikely, people that you wouldn't necessarily expect
mhm,
to have a relationship, begin to build relationships. So that's one of the like key things that really stood out to me in the story, but just all those other little tidbits. So you've kind of given a little bit of a like overview of what the story is about. And I would like to talk a little bit more about the characters because they
Okay.
really are powerful women. Now you said that Vivian, I'm going to start with Vivian Jean because you said she kind of came to you first. So
Yeah.
she is this like, I look at her as
She's
like this well-to-do sister, you know,
mhm,
at the time.
mhm.
It comes from this family that's been powerful, but yet she's carrying a lot of things with her.
She's carrying a lot of guilt and a lot of well, first putting her in her time period in terms of her family's wealth. In Chicago, there was in the 1930s a whole area of town that was very wealthy, very Black. It had everything from doctors, lawyers, bankers. I mean, during this time period, even though by the 1935s the binga banks weren't anymore because a lot of stuff fell apart
Mm-hmm.
in 1929 when the stock market crashed. And that impacted quite a few businesses that were Black owned, and there wasn't a support system at all for Black owned businesses. And even though some of the other businesses were able to reestablish themselves, not the Black owned businesses, and especially not the Binga Bank. Now, the Binga Bank had some connections to
Right.
policy gambling, but nonetheless, this particular family, Vivian Jean's family, was a part of her father had money from insurance company that he helped build and run, a um, post stock market crash investments, and then he had money before that. And so nonetheless, even though she was a socialite of sorts, she was still dependent, as many women, as most women were back during this time period,
Right.
on the generosity of fathers and husbands.
Fathers and
If fathers and husbands, who was going to sponsor and support her and keep her in the lifestyle that she was raised in and had grown accustomed to. So she's a woman that I always want, there's an assumption sometimes when you're writing historical fiction featuring African American or Black protagonists that you're going to be talking about people of different poverty levels only. And that's just not the case.
Right.
One of the there's several big money people that I sort of throw into the mix there, including the owner of Chicago Defender,
Yeah.
Mr. Abbott. He had, a powerful man, ran a powerful newspaper that had not only national prestige across the nation, carried to different parts of the country by Pullman port, the guys on the train, Pullman porters, and that's how the magazine, or excuse me, the newspaper spread. But nonetheless, he was there. There were artists. I mentioned a sculptress who was a very there was also, I didn't keep her in the book, but there was also a very wealthy real estate woman, Black woman, during the time period. So there were a number of families that had and lived in that same neighborhood off of what was then Grand Boulevard. I believe it's now Martin Luther King Drive or something like that. And, time changes names. And so I wanted to make sure I had her in there. And representing that lifestyle, that education. She was a college student,
Right.
all of these things, because she was besties with, in my fictional world, she was besties with Katherine Dunham, even though she was older than Katherine, because she was around 30, I believe. Yeah, because the whole thing is her 30th birthday.
Her 30th birthday, right.
Yeah. And her story has to do with the rules and regulations of trust funds and how you
Yeah.
can get your hands on them or how you can't. So she was
Yeah.
able to find some things on her own. And that trip, even though outwardly it looked like she wanted to go on an anthropological journey, she was actually really looking for something to help heal her guilt and
Yes.
her, yeah. So that was, she, this is in the first chapter, first paragraphs of this story, you learn that she has married her deceased first
Younger.
husband's younger brother.
Younger brother. Yes. So
And so
yeah,
there's,
that's drama off the rip. And
yeah,
but when I read that part of the book, I'm thinking, but really in a way that's biblical. You know what I mean? That at a
yeah.
certain point in time, that just is what it was.
Well,
Because
and
a
there was some
woman couldn't be on
there's
her
some
own.
surprises that I won't reveal that
We don't do spoilers.
play into her decision of marrying the younger brother, whom she'd known both brothers all of her life. They were neighbors.
Mhm.
And so it became something that happened more often than not in society, because you wanted,
Mhm.
a father would want a daughter to live a certain lifestyle and marry into and consistently have that lifestyle. If,
Right.
she'd have to be, really bonkers to say, I'm walking away from this and going to do this, that, and the other. So if they
Right.
tell her she's not doing it, she was like, okay, I ain't got no money. Better not do
And
it.
one thing I like about Vivian Jean though is that she, even though that's her truth, she is someone that's educated. She's gone to school.
Mhm.
She has studied anthropology. She has studied dance with Katherine and things like that. So she's not just a little housewife per se.
Oh, not at all.
There's more
Yeah,
to her than just that. So I do like that
yeah,
about her
yeah.
character.
She has agency. There were things she wanted to accomplish. There were things she wanted to clear off of her deck, so to
Mm,
speak. And that was a
mhm.
very, very much a part of her journey.
Yes.
And her new husband, or her husband, was also a part of her journey. I can't even remember
Definitely.
his name. What was his name?
You call him
So
Tully. It was something else. They called him Tully in the book.
yeah, that's right. Tully. He had another fancier name, but his nickname was Tully.
His nickname was
So
Tully, and her first husband was Clifford. I wrote, I was writing stuff down so I can make sure I keep
okay,
it up here. So we have her, and
okay,
and it's kind of like she is the person that is already connected to Katherine, and they've planned these. There are different things that are happening that
yes.
have inspired her to go on
Hmm.
this trip. But then we also in Chicago is where we originally meet Othella. So first I have to ask you about the
Yes,
name. In the book you mentioned the name, but what was it that made you as the author choose that
it's
name?
actually that name is. I read in a historical document
Mhm,
a black woman named Othella,
mhm.
and I said, I'm using
Right.
that mess. I'm taking it. And I'm using that. I just found it, because it's of course a take on
Right.
Othella.
Mhm,
This is Othella.
mhm.
I mean Othello. Now I'm confused. But it's definitely taken from the Shakespeare uh character. And I said, oh, this is cool. But it was a black woman in a historical document named Othella. And I just said, I'm
I
running with
love
it.
it. I love it.
On and actually, Vivian Jean's name is inspired by, again, a historical reference. There was a librarian, and I shouldn't even talk about it because I may write a book about her, a librarian back in the 20s and 30s. Her name was Vivian Jean something. I can't remember her last name, real woman. Right now, I can't remember it. But what she was able to do, she is recognized for having one of the first historical archives, if you will, established in the 20s and 30s of black poets.
Wow.
All, I mean, she had an amazing collection, and it still exists today. and I think the name is the Vivian Jean Library. It's a branch of the Chicago Public Library system.
I love that. I love that.
But she was an amazing woman. She had a very interesting story. I won't say anymore because I may write about her.
You may
And
write
then
about it.
I may write about it. She had some mess happen. And then there's Zinzi. I just looked up Jamaican names and created her pretty much from scratch. But definitely everything. The three women have three different sort of paths, if you will. Vivian Jean is like a socialite. And Othella's claim to fame is that she's a pickpocket. She's a street person. She's a survivor. She's 19 years old. She's been on her own for a minute. She's had some bad luck, bad experiences, but she knows how to survive. And then you have Zinzi, who has had some tragedies in her past. And those tragedies have driven her to be a zealot when it comes to helping form the labor unions in Jamaica during this time period. Factually, there were just some harsh working conditions at the plantations, be it the sugar cane plantations, which were just deadly working conditions. And you also had the banana plantations, and it's just that was what was happening during that time period. And so I wanted to explore those three different. How do those three different types of people come together with a personality like Katherine Dunham, sort of jetting in and jetting out?
Yes. One of the things that I really loved about Othella, though, is yes, she came from a rough and tumble background, right? But it's like, but when we meet her, and again, we're not going to do spoilers. When we meet her, she's really trying to break free. She's had certain things, but she decides she wants something different from the life that she's always had. And one of the things just throughout her story, and you alluded to a little bit, and y'all will see when you read the book, that sometimes as hard as you try, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. We're not going to tell you whether it does or does not. But I just, she was a young woman that she decided that she wanted something different, and she took risks. She was a risk taker.
And yes, she was definitely a risk taker, and things snowballed. Sometimes you make one choice and you think, okay, this is fine. I'll be able to accomplish this, that, or the other. But you're absolutely right. The thing that I really enjoyed about writing Othella's story, her line and her thread, if you will, through the book, is that she was on a mission of change. She was going to change her life. She was going to do things differently. And she was able to accomplish some of her goals. And she was able to do some things that I think will resonate, because much of what she was able to do had to do with the people she met, the new people she met. What was the young man's name?
I wrote it down. Where is it? Robbie. Robbie.
It makes me laugh because I literally cannot. I mean, I was all into Robbie and Othella, and I can't even remember Zinzi's guy, and I loved him.
Byron.
I'm looking at him. Byron. Yes, and he was inspired by a real person too. But yeah, I look at that. All of these characters.
That's why I wrote them down.
And all of these names.
I wouldn't get them confused, right?
But for me, it's like, because right now some of my characters that I'm working on, what are some of the characters in this new book? Is Zia, Ezekiel. It's not Ezekiel. Ezekiel was in Wild Women in the Blues. Yes. I got to be careful.
You got to be careful. Okay. That's why you need people like me who actually read the books, who can keep you on track. But yeah,
on track.
Yeah, so there is this big, there are a lot of things that are happening. Of course, we're not going to talk about everything that happens in the book because number one, that would be a spoiler. Number two, we want you to read it, and it's really worth reading. I was telling a friend of mine, and it's fast paced. I kept wanting to turn the page because there is a little bit of mystery and things that are going on that you don't really know. And the timeline, well,
Right.
it's told in like under the three main characters. It's told through their
Mhm.
voices. And so sometimes we see what happened from one person's perspective, and then we
Yeah.
see the similar thing from another person's perspective. But really, time wise, what is it? Maybe 6 months, 7 months,
It's
8 months,
probably,
maybe.
I think it's actually less than that because
Yes,
probably about 4 months, probably about
yeah.
4 or 5. Yeah, because it kicks off and yeah, it's only about 3 months, three, maybe
Mm-hmm,
4 months.
mm-hmm.
And um, a good part of that time is definitely spent. I mean, Jamaica's definitely because of the way I wrote it, Jamaica's always a part of the entire book, but it's when everybody finally gets together.
Yes.
Um, they're in as a group, they're in Jamaica for I think 2 months.
Okay.
Maybe, yeah, about 2 months. Um, because there's just some ramp up time with Zinzi and what have you, because they get there in end of August and the hurricane hits the end of October. And that
Okay.
hurricane did happen. Now, the whole book is not about the hurricane. The hurricane is coming, but the whole book is not, the hurricane is not on page 1 or 2,
Right.
maybe.
Right.
Yeah, something like that.
Yes, but it's just to see, because another thing we get to witness what travel was like during that
Yeah.
time frame. You take
Yeah.
them, you take characters from Chicago and put them
Mhm,
on a train to New York.
mhm.
Then they get to New York and they have to take a boat to get to
And
Jamaica.
they have to
So
go
we
to a certain pier, and all of
yeah.
that is researched because the 20th Century Limited, which is the train that existed during that time period, was actually one of the fastest trains. It was a new train from Chicago to New York. So I had to
Mhm.
find that information. And then departure times, because I've done some cruises and things like that. So I was familiar with the notion that you get on a ship in the afternoon.
Right.
That's what I thought. Then I researched, and there was only one pier in New York during the 1930s where Black people could board the ship.
Um,
So
wow.
I had, and that departure was different than last time I went on a cruise, of course, which was not in the 1930s, thank God. But so all of those things had to be, I just wanted that. I wanted to know those things on board the ship, which was an interesting fact. It was according to the captain and the captain's background, whether or
Mhm.
not the level of segregation on board a ship. And I did find some information and data, and I found a wonderful floor plan for this
Mhm.
ship, U.S. type. I can't even remember the name. It begins with a T. That ship existed. It was a cruise ship. It was owned by the United Fruit Company. If you all grab the book, just know that the United Fruit Company, that was this huge company that did sugar plantations and ships and all of this stuff, is today known as Chiquita Bananas. Mhm.
Okay.
It's just the evolution of things is always fascinating to me. How and still the poverty that exists in parts of Jamaica today is still
Yeah.
the same. It's
Yes.
just history. People need to
Yeah,
learn.
and to think that was less than 1935, that's less than 100 years ago. People think that was a long, long, long time ago. Like, not really.
The thing that'll get you going is when you start working on a book in the 19 that takes place in the 1960s, and and you look at where the world is then to where the
Mm,
world is now, and talk about you know getting extra scared. And because the next book I'm working on takes place in the 60s and the early 1970s in the US, and in London. And so it's just, again, a fascinating look at history, but primarily looking at these characters that I'm creating that have to navigate their lives within the context of this atmosphere of a historical backdrop.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
You
something.
know, you want to learn some things, but you also want to take a close look. To me, the reader wants to be emotionally connected to character.
Absolutely.
And every time I write a book, it's just part of, I think every author does this. They want to do a better job of getting that story to connect for readers. And,
Yes.
however you go about making that happen, it's very, I get very passionate about that. I wish I wrote faster, and I wish I thought faster, and I wish I could come up with this.
Wrote faster. Like, haven't I talked to you like every year for the past? Come on, man.
I know, but there will be a wait for the next one, because the one I'm working on now has to finish, and then I have to get it to my agent, and then it has to, go through the process. But I'm excited about that. I'm excited about some of the things that are happening in terms of Black author storytelling.
Yes.
Yes, there are some significant challenges in the marketplace, and they continue to grow, and they continue to twist and turn because of the political environment that we are in. At the same time, there are influencers like yourself, more Black, I say, sponsors of authors who want to share what authors are doing and love books by Black people. That it feels like there's a surge happening.
It definitely is.
It just really feels, and I'm very excited about that. Now we just have to get the publishers on board and get them to, okay, let me not get started. And on a consistent basis, there are some publishers out there who are doing remarkable work for all of their authors. There are some that aren't, okay? That's just the reality of the world we live in. Not everybody is always on top of their game. And some of them don't have a game. So, that gets a little challenging. Yeah. So I am one of those authors who's very much I'm a very positive person, even though I can see where things go awry, but I'm an optimist. I don't think I could do what I do if I didn't have feeling that this is going to be fantastic.
And it is.
Yeah. You just have to be there because, I think that you mentioned that I was a dancer back in the day. And one of the things that as a dancer or a creative or an artist that I learned, I went to a lot of auditions because I was also pretended to sing. And it was just not a good, was not the best singer, even though I have a dream of singing in a jazz nightclub one day. But I did the dancing thing. I auditioned, and there would be so many people in line who looked like me. So the chances of opportunity, you really had to get lucky, and I was in New York for a number of years, and I danced with some of the people in my dance classes included Madonna, and I danced with, there was a Sunday morning jazz class in Lower Manhattan, and everybody was there at this class, and Madonna was there. And I remember her because she was in a dance class back in the day, especially a jazz class or modern dance class or what have you. The first row you were always fighting to get into the first row because there could be 50 to 60 people in a huge dance class, mirrors in the front, music blaring. Sometimes you'd have live music. And this is going back a few years, but I would show up to that class and I was always trying to get in the front row. And that competitiveness and creative juices flowing sort of environment that I did the dance thing in carried over to my marketing and PR life, carried over to my author life. So
Yes.
I'm pretty much a positive person when it comes, hey, there's always people out there and there's always partnerships, and authors are generous. Black authors are generous. Most authors are generous. So that makes this environment more well, is the word comfortable? No, the word is more enjoyable.
Enjoyable.
It's just more.
Yes. Yes. One of the things that I really love about you is that you really do embrace the arts and the culture. And even in this, and Where the False Gods Dwell, we get to see how you really looked at what would have been happening, not just from a historical perspective, that piece, but then also looking at the culture of this Maroon community, learning, what their practices were, knowing what things like the obia, I might be saying it wrong, that were there. Just the culture, everything that was a part of this community and what made it stand out and what made it different. And those were the things that would have drawn Katherine Dunham to want to be there.
Well, a lot of
absolutely.
Absolutely. And so much of, well, some of it I had to tap into my family, because my family on my mother's side are the Jamaicans. On my dad's side, it's the Bermudans. So there's always a war. There was always a war going on. But the Jamaican side, I remember my grandmother's energy, and I had a heavy accent when I was a kid, that I lost through practice because I was getting, beat up at school in Cleveland. Once we moved to Cleveland away from the farm, there was just different, just coming in with the little British accent and Jamaican accent. It was just not all that cool at the time. But looking at, you had mentioned the environment, the culture of that time period, but also just that culture. And Katherine Dunham wrote a lot about that time period. She eventually, and who knows, I might put her in another book or to have her, because she had such a big life, such a big, interesting life, because she got involved in civil rights. She got involved in this, that, and the other. The other thing, she was married at the time of 1935, but her husband at the time didn't go with her. And
right, yeah, he's like a footnote, just kind of mention him and move on.
That's a fact, because by the time she got back, she got rid of he was no longer her husband. But I some of that feeling I got from my grandmother, just the sense of, I remember just how she did what she did, how she spoke, how she ran the farm that she and my grandfather had as if she was still in Jamaica for her entire life. I mean, we had all of the, vegetables, she made wine, she killed chickens, she, it was just the whole thing for her whole life. She may have left Jamaica and arrived in America in 1920 something, but she passed, I think, in 1990. She was always in Jamaica. So I had that memory, contextual memory thing I could play with her. But then Katherine Dunham's writings were another fabulous resource for that community. She wrote a whole book about just her time in Accompong, even though most of her studies
It's
took
in
place
Haiti.
in Haiti. Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
I just enjoyed being able to read and to learn because nowadays you have a lot more people in our culture who are saying, hey, we want to know more about these African healing practices or, our
Yes.
cultural practices or, learning more about working the land, all of those sorts of things.
Hmm.
And there are a lot of people here in the States like yourself that have like that Jamaican heritage. But it's not just that, it's just the fact of understanding how they were even able to sustain themselves and have like their own space and be like warriors and all those sorts of things. I think that that is a really amazing part of the story as well, to be able to kind of do a deep dive into it. And then like when we look at Zinzi specifically, since that's home to her, like
Yeah.
how she has kind of leaned away from it, because that happens a lot of times that the younger
Hmm.
generation, for a variety of reasons, we're not going to tell you why Zinzi does this, but for a variety of reasons, there are people who lean away from maybe the things that their elders have taught them or shown
Right.
them. But we get to see kind of how she reintegrates into that world when she's kind of forced to go back home.
Well, there were multiple, how can I put it, different types of societies or groups in Jamaica during that time, similar to what you might find there today. And some of it back in the 30s was definitely divided on a color line. According to the shade of your skin, what opportunities might be available to you. And there were people working the plantations, but it was still a big tourist
Mhm.
spot. Americans jumping on a ship coming down, Europeans coming over. Jamaica was a hotspot. And so, you know, that element worked into the story as well. You got a little taste of that. You got to definitely her involvement in the labor union, activism, and um, juxtapositioning that with sort of a little, I guess, a thread to the plantation owners that
Mhm.
are also um, a part of the complexity of the whole story that ties back to
Guys,
Chicago.
back to Chicago. So yeah, that's one thing. So when I was reading
Yeah.
this Denny, I kept thinking about you because like, okay, you got Chicago in here, that's home, and I didn't even realize the Jamaican connection, and then the
Yeah.
dance, Katherine Dunham. So it definitely
Mhm.
feels like this particular book is a labor of love because it taps into so many things that are a part of your own life
Of
experience.
my past. I always get Chicago in a book. I'm gonna slide it in there some kind of way.
Mm.
I'm gonna finish this one. There's some Chicago, even though my main characters are the early part of the story takes place in Harlem in the 1960s. But then we're gonna get into Chicago in
Gotta go to
that
Chi-Town.
that
Gotta go to
little
Chi-Town.
Chi-town action, which I enjoy. Yeah, yeah, I'm glad that I'm just gonna stay focused. I can't say that because there's another book I'm working on, mostly on historical fiction.
Yes.
And you could have thrillers, you could have all sorts of things that fall under that big category.
Now we talked about the thriller aspect earlier. There is it's a little bit. It's like some stuff that's going on that you already said Chicago and gangster life and things like that.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we know that things might not have always been great when you're dealing with plantation owners. Things aren't always great when you're talking
Well,
about
honestly,
labor.
during that time period, I
Uh,
talk about the 1930s. You had gangsters, you had the end of prohibition, you had the stock market crash. All of these big movements and political changes and financial
mhm.
upheavals impacted a lot of different businesses, a lot of different cultures, including the Black community and the non-Black community, in different ways. And
Mm.
Vivian Jean's money, her family money, is a part of 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 what can happen or what can't happen. Yeah. So I
Exactly.
tried, in talking about it, I'm like, the threads, the threads.
No, there
Um,
are.
yeah, there's a number of threads, but hopefully, the way what I worked on is definitely introducing them in the context of these women and how these things impact them as they
Mhm.
strive for their independent goals. Their
Right.
goals are very different, but at the same time, once they come together, it gives clarity to each woman's ambitions or each woman's what she is striving for becomes clearer as she relies more on the woman next to her. And
Right.
that was that sisterhood, um, that learning to
Mm.
appreciate um, someone else's value and how
Mhm.
that value can be a part of who you are,
Mhm.
lead them to the closing chapters of the story.
Yes, that was something that really stood out to me because I wrote a couple things down. It's like, of course, we know women making difficult choices, so we see that throughout the book. We see people
Mhm.
who love, who experience loss, and then learn how to love again in a variety of ways, whether it's romantic or through friendship. We
Through
see people
friendship.
making sacrifices. We see people having
Mhm.
secrets. I mean, it's a lot of different things. But one of the ones that really did stand out to me was the whole part of sisterhood because as you said, this is a matter of months that the main part of the story takes place, and in that time frame have people who we have Vivian Jean and Catherine who knew each other, but the other people really didn't. But
Really
they
did.
they managed to come together. They managed to see things in each other where they could find ways to
Mhm.
support one another and all of that. And I just found that pretty powerful because a lot of times we can look at stories between women and that we can see, what could I say, the things that make us not get along or not work together.
Yeah, yeah. And this story, um, it wasn't it was always about any conflict had to be, at least in my mind, had more to do with a conflict in philosophies, not in personalities.
Right,
There were just certain goals that a Zinzi had that might not be on the same page as another character, but that's because that other character's goals might have been in conflict, but the women weren't necessarily in conflict.
right,
It's their
right,
ambition, their goals, what they were there to accomplish. And
right,
so, so trying to work through that, and then having a character like Othella, um, in some interesting way, became an innocent. Once, and I thought of her that way
mm,
in which once she got to Jamaica, because everything was so new between her exposure to stuff that she was like, "What? I'm a city
right,
girl," and
right. A whole
and
different world.
yeah, a whole different world. So she became more of an innocent, and I liked her journey, um, as best as she could figure it out.
Right. Well, you keep saying you like their
Yeah.
journey. I have a question about that, and then we're almost at time, actually. So I want to make
Oh,
sure
wow.
that we finish out. And there were a couple of comments. I want to we'll make sure we get back to those.
Oh,
But the way you are talking about the characters, it's almost like they're telling you who they want it to be. Is that true, or did you kind of know when you sat down to put, pen to paper or fingers to keyboard, did you kind of know who they were going to be?
okay. I think okay. characters don't necessarily talk to me. What I do with them is I do a lot of dictation, and I'll act out a scene.
Okay.
That's my theater and dance background. You know, all of a sudden I'm everybody. I'm like, and then she said, you gotta watch it, you know. So I'm just acting the whole thing out. And then once I go back through and start revision, during the revision process, that's where I find the path, that character's journey. I do a lot of upfront work, prep work. A lot of that prep work is history. A lot of that prep work might be character stuff, just to sort of flesh them out. What's their backstory? What's this, that, or the other? But I had a revelation today, which sounds, every book is so freaking different. But I had a revelation with a character today that it's early in the book. She's wrong about a lot of things. And that didn't come to me until I stepped away and said, because I was having sort of like a challenge with this particular next chapter. And I said, oh, she's wrong, but that doesn't mean she doesn't believe what she believes during that part. And so Othella, for that matter, she believes so much. At the same time, that there's this pressure, that there's a recurring thing that with her. It's almost like, you know, voices coming to her. That voice that's coming to her, I heard that voice. I must admit that voice talked to me. But that happens frequently. I had to confess during another presentation that my late mother always makes an appearance. Any variation of her, because there are numbers of versions of my late mother, and she always makes some sort of appearance in my stories. Sometimes in a big way, sometimes in multiple ways, because you know, it's just since she's passed, I can do and say anything. The last she was still alive with my first book, and she was like, "That better not be me." That's what she said. Oh, I'm not writing about you. That better not be me. Okay, it's not. It's always her.
It's not you. Fingers crossed, toes crossed, everything crossed. Right. Well, I have a question about the title. I know where the title came from, where the false gods dwell, but you know, tell the audience where.
Well, it's from a poem by Langston Hughes. The poem is called Union, and I think it was written in 1926 or might have been 1935. I can't remember, but I know I'm pretty sure it's public domain. I don't think I put it in the book, however. And
it's not in this one.
And that I was interviewed by someone who tied together the Union poem, which was about not unions necessarily, but the idea of working with people and what have you, and the whole Zinzi storyline. And I said, no, that's not what I had in mind. What I had in mind definitely has to do with the phrase, where the false gods dwell. Who are the false gods in these women's lives? Is it their own? Is it their wanting something that doesn't make sense, or is it wanting something that is perfectly okay? And the opening prologue, for example, talks about it's a very short prologue, and it talks about where the false gods dwell and blah blah blah, and the god is she, and that was very important to me because the main entity is womanhood in this story. And sometimes women are false, sometimes women aren't. Where the false gods dwell. So that's my interpretation of title.
Good explanation. Thank you. because someone
Yay!
said the title grabbed me and the storyline sounds good. Looking forward to reading it.
Yay!
I love that she was on a mission of change. Yes, yes, yes.
Mhm,
Actually, all of
mhm.
the ladies were in their own way.
Yes,
All of
in
them
their
were.
own way.
And
Very much.
this is a question about what Drexel University. Now I know you're adjunct. Is that the one that's in Philly though?
Yeah, it's in Philly. I work remotely.
Uh-huh.
I have I do classes, 10-week classes on occasion. I work one-on-one with students who are in what they call a low-res MFA program because some of the students live on the West Coast. I mean, it's all over the country where
Okay.
where people can participate in this Master of Fine Arts program. And I've been doing it now for about 5 years. And very, very much love the program, and it's and the people, the students. Some just fantastic books are coming from these students, and the student age range can be 30 to 75. I
Oh wow.
mean, it's it's a great experience, and I
That-
love working with these writers.
That's
Yeah.
powerful. So I know that this book baby isn't even a week old, and you've already told us you're working on other stuff. We know that that's the case. But for this particular book, I know that you have had some events already. Are there any other
Yes.
events that you have coming up
Yes.
anytime soon? Where the
Well, this weekend I'm going to be with you here in Savannah, Georgia, at an event. I have another virtual event tomorrow night. Next week, I'm in New York City at the New York Society Library on March 12th. So if you're in New York, come see me. I'll be doing a wonderful evening presentation on the book, talking about some other elements that I have not talked about here, but also some show and tell. Then after that, I'm at the festival, the Virginia Festival of the Book in Charlottesville on March 20th to 22nd. I'm very excited about that. I'm going to be on a panel with Clay. He's written the book. I can't remember
I know
Clay's
what it
last name.
is. It's not coming to me either, but I know who it is.
Right, it's Burned Down the Master's House.
Right.
So he and I are going to be on a panel with Jocelyn Johnson, who wrote My Monticello. She's going to be our moderator. I'm going to moderate. I'm very excited about this. I'm moderating a panel with this gal right here. Her name is Maggie Stylwater. She's a New York Times best-selling author of historical fiction. And the other author will be the fabulous Satiqua Johnson. And so we're going to have a huge event, and I have both of these books to get under my belt so I can have a great time moderating that panel, and then I have my own panel. So, and then in May, I'll be in California at the Santa Barbara Literary Festival. And then I'll be in Atlanta in June at Author Talks. I mean, every month.
You're going
And there's
somewhere and doing something.
There's some
And
other
still
things
writing
coming,
and all that in between. Like, ooh, it's a lot. It's a lot.
but
We have a couple extra questions. We've got some more questions for you. And I did put
okay.
up at the top, there's a QR code. If you want to purchase the book, you can go there and find it. That's at the Brown Girl Collective Bookstore, which is attached to the bookshop. So you can find that, the book right there. So we have a couple other questions. Thanks for sharing this evening. I'm looking forward to reading it. I do have a question for Miss Bryce. What made you decide to become an author?
Well, actually, fan fiction. I used to write fan fiction when I used to run a PR and marketing firm. So that kind of work can make you quite cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And one of the things that I would do to relax would be to write what was very popular, Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan fiction. And it was a whole online thing. And I was a fan of the show. I'd write these stories, I'd post these stories under a name, and then I kept doing that until one of my stories won an online award.
I love
And
it.
one of the authors, who was, under an alias, who was actually a published author, invited me to join her at Romance Writers of America conference. And I was like, oh, sure, I'll do that. And the next thing I know, every summer I would go to writing things, because summer was when I had most of my time, because I was, as I said, running a business, but during the months of July and August, I was pretty free. So I just go to events and go to conferences. And I did that for about 10 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Until I decided I want to write. I want to write full time. So I changed my life in order to be a full-time writer. And that was a big decision. That was a major change. And then the pandemic came, which it just added to the fun of that. And so that's how I got into this particular aspect, because I remember when I first got my first agent that I no longer have, I was writing 3 different genres. I was writing contemporary, I was writing erotic, and I was writing historical. And I was contemporary paranormal. I was writing paranormal and erotic romances. And so she looked at all of my work, because I was getting awards and winning stuff and all of those, not unpublished things. And she said, let's go with the historical fiction. Because and that's how I started writing seriously historical fiction and working with picking a genre. And now I'm just so glad, even though I may pull in some of those other things in this.
Yeah, you can always pull them in, or be like some authors who use, a different name to write other things. There's a lot of ways to
lots of ways. But I have a paranormal book that, after I finish the one I'm working on, that has a very deeply historical feel to it, with the history. And I'm gonna probably pull that baby up, because that thing just needs to be rewritten. But it's one of those under the bed books that when I read it, when I look at it, I'm like, oh, this is not that bad.
I love that.
Yeah.
We have another comment about Drexel, Small World. I participated in the writer's room for the community and students at Drexel U. Okay.
Oh, cool. Yep. Okay. So you know, and they have a great program, and I enjoyed working with them and having the opportunity to interact, because it's a 2-year program. So I get students that work with me for 2 years. And then I also teach a course on short stories for writers, for fiction writers, and then another course on dual timelines. I do a lot of dual work around.
Well, somebody's asking about Bertice Berry. Do you know Dr. Bertice Berry? She's been here before. It might be before your time, Matt 204, but she's there.
I can't say I know her. I don't know her. I know of her. Me and Savannah, I live near the airport, and for the 5-6 years that I've lived here, I primarily go to the airport and go someplace else.
I understand. I lived there for a while. I understand.
This is not a big city to me, so I'm. We'll see. I'm actually thinking about moving, but I don't know yet. I don't know. I'm always thinking about doing something. This is how I stay in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I just think of the stories you're able to tell, because you have a varied life experience. Because people keep asking me when I'm going to write something, because it's kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of different things in my life. I got a lot of stuff I could talk about.
I have done so as well. In fact, I got to TMI the last time I was talking, because, and I won't go into detail, but dancing in New York during the time period I was dancing, you also had to have extra jobs. And one of my extra jobs was dancing in New Jersey, except it was late at night, and
Okay.
there was a bar involved.
Oh yeah, you got to tell the story.
Yeah, yeah.
At some point.
So there's that lifestyle that I also, there's about 8 of us lived in what was called a railroad apartment. And I will share this. One of the things during that time period, I think it was in the 80s, late 80s or whenever, if you were Black, you couldn't work at the clubs in New York. You could only get hired in Jersey. So most of my friends we were all dancer girls and guys, were white, and they could work in New York. I was the only one, you audition and you get good money, but you were still working in Jersey, I guess.
Right.
But it was a different type of dancing. I think some people might call it go-go dancing, except it wasn't really go-go dancing. It was something else.
Okay. Girls in cages.
It had that feel. Or dancing on a bar top. There's that too.
Okay, I got it. Yeah, we had talked about that. I don't want to say, hey,
Okay.
I'm older, but hey, I'd still be game to try it now. Like, hey, Mercy's gonna get on the table.
Oh my goodness!
And, dance on the table, dance in the cage, just
for memory's sake. Okay?
Just for the memory's sake, just to say I have done it. We all have those. Some people call it a bucket list. I call it a lifetime list. We all got them. Just like you say, you want to sing. Hey, I want to dance in the cage. How about
Yes. Hey.
Woo! Yeah, we like to make y'all laugh.
That's for sure. And at the time, I was bald. I'd taken off all my hair. I had maybe just a little bit of hair.
Oh, wow. Wow. I love that.
So
Bring a picture on Saturday. I need to see that.
Okay. I do have one over there. Yeah, I will bring the photos of the dancer girl. I actually posted one on Facebook a long time ago. I may have to pull that back up.
See, your Facebook is up here. Folks are gonna start scrolling your Facebook to see if they can find it.
And it's amazing. Hey, if I'm super famous, there's some stuff on Facebook I may need to pull down, because people be digging for your information. I was like, oh my goodness. And then find this video.
I love it.
I get scared.
Well, we could talk all night, but thank you so much for joining me, Denny.
Yeah.
Yeah, y'all got a little extra tonight, so we love that. We always love that, just to have a conversation, because a lot of people say, "Oh, I just get my glass of wine, I sit and listen to you talk to everybody," because it's just like some girlfriends getting together to have a conversation, and that's exactly the vibe that we are going for over here. So, and I know my mom was probably watching, like, "You want to dance in a what?"
See, I admit my stuff after my mother passed.
Well, since we're telling dance story, I do have to tell y'all this right quick. And my mom was there, so she actually saw it years ago. Y'all remember the song Rex and Effect, Rump Shaker, right? I did dance in a rump shaker contest years and years ago. I did. My mama was there. She actually saw it. So. Yes. So yeah.
The club.
And they're saying they do research. So fortunately, back then we did not have social media. So
I mean, lives have been saved because we did not have social media back in the day.
Yes.
Because I'm telling you, the trouble I would have had. Okay, we gotta.
Yeah, we gotta go.
I'm having flashbacks.
But yes, thank you so much for being here, Denny. I appreciate you. I know the audience does as well. Again, I want to show the cover of the book. It's behind her, but also here. Please go ahead. And I saw somebody clicked on the link already, so thank you for that. But please go ahead and pick up a copy of Where the False Gods Dwell, wherever you can find it. It's audio as well, correct?
Yes, there's an audio book as well. There's the ebook, and then there's the paperback. So grab what works for you.
grab what works for you. Reach out to your libraries to make sure they have
Yeah,
copies. All of
yeah.
those things are
Mhm.
equally as important. So
Absolutely.
everybody, thank you so much. Let me just make sure. Yeah, True Confessions not yet. Like, yeah, and we're not even drinking. So I'm
Yes, yes. That's why we have to jump off of here
we have to
before.
jump off because before it goes too far. But anyway,
Exactly. Because I'll
again,
forget.
thank you so
I'll
much. Thank you so
get
much for
stuff
being
as
here. I'm gonna let
soon
you
as
grab some water and I'm gonna say good night to everybody. But don't you hang up just yet because I do want to say
okay.
goodbye to you. But thanks again for being here, and I will see you in a couple of days.
Yes.
All righty. So thank you everyone for joining us. I know, excuse me, I got a little bit of a cough. I done laughed and giggled so much that now I'm starting to cough. But as always, Denny, thank you so much for being here. It's always a pleasure to have you talk to you. It's always a pleasure to, see you when I get a chance to see you in person and all that, which I'll get to do. Everybody, if you get a chance, please make sure that you're following her, Denny, and all the places where she can be followed so you can keep up with what's happening with this particular book, which, is really good. We only scratched the surface. There's so much we didn't even tell you that you're really going to love when you get a chance to dive into it. But please do that. If you're not familiar with the other works, look up all those works. If you go to the Brown Girl Collective YouTube channel, which you are right now, and just search her name, you will see some of the previous conversations that we've had about her other books. But last thing, just by means of announcement, next week I am going in a different direction. It is a nonfiction book, but it is also about a real person that you may want to know about, and that is Queen Mother. That is Black Nationalism, Reparations, and the Untold Story of Audley Moore. So this is a real life person, that we will be talking about next week with Ashley R. Farmer. So please, or Ashley D. Farmer, I apologize. So please join us next week to learn some things about Queen Mother, who is Audley Moore. So that's all I have for you tonight. I've gone over, I've got silly and all of those things. So thank you so much for being here, and I look forward to seeing you again real soon. Take good care. Bye-bye.